is the story and origins behind the oldest and most terrifying infected variant that we can find within The Last of Us. For more than 2 decades, the cordyceps infection has been left to ravage what little remains of humanity. Critical infrastructure has fallen, and nature has reclaimed even the largest cities from across the planet. And city by city, there is one thing in common: the fact that the infection runs rampant and unchecked. Recently, we published a video detailing the stages of infection and the progression between them, but one type of infected seems to stand head and shoulders above the rest as the single most horrifying. So today, my friends, let's discuss the story of the Rat King from The Last of Us Part 2. Assess exactly what it is, where it came from, and what makes it so much different than the rest of the infected. The Rat King can be found in exactly one place, and so far as we know, this is the only example in existence of the Rat King right now. We don't know yet if there are more examples of this mysterious creature, or if this was the only one. Deep within the recesses of the Seattle Ground Zero, we watch as Abby explores the basement of an abandoned hospital. This basement is the single oldest point of infection left in the entire city, and has been left to foster the virus for 25 years. In fact, Abby can still locate artifacts from Zero Day, otherwise known as Outbreak Day in The Last of Us universe. These notes were left by the first patients in the city, and chronicled the slow loss of sanity between infected victims. Then, only after finding the medical supplies she needs, does Abby encounter the Rat King. This grotesque abomination is more than just a simple infected, but seems to be the fusion of multiple infected victims into a single hive body. We know that the cordyceps grow outside of just a victim's body even after death. In several spore-infested areas, there is often a body that is responsible. The fungus grows to infect the nearby walls and floor, sprouting masses all around the corpse. Sometimes these growths can even house living infected who have become trapped within the walls. But in this basement, it seems as if something far more terrifying has happened. Rather than fuse living bodies to walls, floors, or elsewhere in the environment, the cordyceps bonded several infected to one another. We can see that the Rat King has several mouths and far too many limbs, and at one point in the fight, one of these infected actually breaks away from the main body of the Rat King. In fact, the name Rat King comes from a real-world phenomenon that happens to actual rats. In the wintertime, rats' tails can freeze to other objects, kind of like sticking your tongue to a frozen pole or a sheet of metal. This freezing causes a rat's tail to bond with something else in the environment, and a Rat King occurs when 3 or more rats have their tails bonded together. From here, we get several living organisms who are all unwillingly bonded together, where one conglomerate houses several minds and bodies. Now it seems as if the same thing has happened to the infected in The Last of Us. Given the strength of the legs and the time that it's been infected, it seems as if a bloater lies at the center of several other clickers melded to any given side. We can see when one clicker breaks away that he's armored across the body rather than simply near the head like other clicker variants. While this supports this idea, that's still not the most terrifying part of the Rat King. The cordyceps fungus is based on real-life fungal infection by the same name. In the real world, the cordyceps most widely are known for targeting ants and ant colonies, causing them to behave in much the same way as the infected in the world of The Last of Us. From here, it ejects spores onto the colony below, and specifically puts the ant in a position to be eaten. When a bird comes by and eats the ant, the cordyceps can be spread through the bird's fecal matter and start the process all over again. But this research has yielded some horrifying discoveries. Although the cordyceps hijack motor control and muscle groups, it doesn't kill the victim. This means that there is a distinct possibility that if The Last of Us follows real-world science, then the victims' minds are still trapped inside the Rat King. If brain activity is still present, then it would mean that the infected are still trapped inside their bodies with no control of their movement. In the first game, we see Sam express the same concerns just hours before he turns. He wonders if the people are trapped in there without any control of the body, destined to forever be an observer to their own horrendous actions. They may have lost the ability to speak, move, and reason, but if real-world science tracks into the fictional world, then they are still very much alive. Are these people being dragged around, forced to feed on other living people without an autonomy over their own body? If so, this has some horrifying implications for the infected within the world. But is there any evidence to suggest this is true? Let's explore. In the hospital basement, as we previously mentioned, we find notes from patients of the outbreak on day 1. Many of the notes begin rather normally, and although the patients are scared, they're still very functional. In particular, let's take a look at the notes of one Don Carter, who seems to write and express himself coherently until the infection begins to take over completely. Don Carter's first note is rational, stating that the doctors cannot treat him like this, and that it's unethical. He demands to see his wife, and refers to his bite, but he appears mentally normal at the time. As his brain devolves, however, his scratches become less and less coherent. In his final note, he simply writes, "Sasha, help. Can't keep my thoughts. Barely write this. Can't sleep. Too hungry. Get me out. Hungry. Eyes hurt. Sasha." It seems that his last thoughts, aside from those of his wife, are hunger. He might not understand why he wants to eat, but the cordyceps are directing him to infect others. We know that the pain behind his eyes is the infection latching onto his brain. Since the cordyceps target the brain in particular, most of these boils and cracks can be seen on the head, but the idea that he's hungry gives us some hope that he's not been trapped in his body full of consciousness, and his consciousness may have died out. The fact that he can, quote, barely keep his thoughts, gives us some hope that when the infection takes over, that the mind of Don Carter has officially gone and has died. If the cordyceps truly did just hijack his muscle groups like it does in the real world, then he likely would have mentioned difficulty with motor rather than desires such as hunger. This also hopefully means that the likes of Sam and other infected were no longer conscious when they turned. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of the Rat King in The Last of Us? Do you think when the infected turn that the host's mind is truly dead? Or are they still trapped inside without any control of their bodies? Are there still multiple people still living within the Rat King as a single organism? Or are they fueled only by their desire to spread the infection? Thank you as always for visiting the horrendous wave today, my friends, and I hope you're having a great one.